let's bring people into the fold and actually give them choice, have the discussions that are important. So as I was listening and hearing about the Republican raising money and getting ready for what he was going to do, realizing that there was no one from the Democratic side who had stepped forward, I started to think that there's an opportunity for me. I can either sit back and continue to complain about it, or I can step up and do something. And so really building back on my background and my upbringing, there's a lot of reasons for me to get involved in this. My parents were teachers, so they brought me up in that mold of you help people. You give them the tools that they need to be successful. So that was ingrained from a very, very young age. I was very active in our church, in the youth group, and we did constant mission trips to go out and to help those people that needed it, so that we could make people understand that there are great things in life and to invite them to be a part of that. When I went to college, I got involved with things like the orientation, to bring new kids in, to make them comfortable to be there, to teach them the ins and outs so that they could be successful. And after that, I moved out and joined the staffing world. So my life for the last 21 years has been putting people into jobs. What can be more helpful than that? Giving someone employment where they can affect their own life in a positive way. And so 14 years ago, I decided to step out and do that on my own, through my own company. And since then, I've put almost 2,000 people into full-time, permanent positions in North Carolina. Now, that's not just matching them with a position, because we do more than that. We step up and actually talk to the people and understand what they want, how they want to live their life, what are their career goals. And then we try to match them up with people that can help them achieve those goals. So, from early age to what I do from a workplace standpoint is that coaching in the Little League, it's all about giving back to people and how can we help them get to a better position. So in looking at what's out there right now from a status quo standpoint, it's a lot of inaction, it's a lot of frustration, it's a lot of absolute partisanship where there's no discussion. And the old adage rings true. If you keep doing the same thing over and over again and you expect different results, that's insanity. We have to be able to try something different and really move forward. So that's another reason for me to get involved in this, because I think I bring a different ideal, a different viewpoint, because I have not been in politics. I've not catered votes. I've not had to compromise on my ideas. I'm still the person that my parents raised me to be. And so having that outside influence, that outside perspective, I think is something that's locally missing right now in Washington. I liken it to the jigsaw puzzle. You sit there, you've got 1,000 pieces in front of you, and you've got 1,800 of them in the right, or 800 of them in the right spot, and you get that stopping point, and you can't find the right one. And then your friend walks up, grabs it, puts it right in the right place, and it now makes sense. Well, that's because they have been staring at it for years, for 22 years. Well, the Republicans up there in the House and the Senate. It's that different perspective that opens up a whole new window of opportunity and a way to move forward. And so that's why I'm getting into this, is to bring that out. As I've gone around the state, and as I was telling your wife earlier, what I've enjoyed the most is being able to actually talk to people. I'm not a speech person. You can tell because of how I'm doing right now. I'm not a speech person, but I am a talker. I want to hear about you and what's important to you, because if I am worthy of your vote and get elected to go to the Senate, it's you that I'm representing. I have to understand where you're coming from. So you have to be open to that discussion. You also have to be open to the ideal and the viewpoint of the person who is diametrically opposed to you. Because you have to understand where they're coming from to be able to get to a common ground. You cannot stand off and be idealistic and determine that everyone who does not agree with you is wrong. That's no way to govern. That's a way to shut down the government. That's a way to end up with sequestration and the inability to move forward as a nation. And so those are the things that I think need to be changed, and having an opportunity to do the reset button is why I jumped into the race. There are all sorts of things that we need to address from an issue standpoint, and I have ideas and thoughts on all of them, and I'll hit some highlights here, but I really want to hear your questions on those so that I can give you kind of the responses based on what you guys are questioning instead of me just running off the mouth to tell you all of my beliefs. But things that are important to me, and one of the first things that I want to push are term limits for Congress. In order to constantly have a flow of new ideas, you need to continually change things up. When we have people that have been up there for 30 years and more, it's hard for them to understand life back in the state when you've lived in D.C., when you've been involved in that. So term limits is certainly something that I want because, again, you've got to bring people into it and change things up. Supporting our veterans is something that is of particular interest. There are a couple of ways that I want to do that. One is by continuing to bolster the VA. We've made some better strides in the last few months as far as giving them more resources, giving them more freedom as far as to how they are able to bring people in and treat them in a more aggressive fashion. But I think we need to continue to expand the opportunity for people who are either out of network or are having to wait too long to be able to go to private providers. We need to expand and take a serious approach to mental health within the military. Right now, most people that are going for mental health treatment in the VA get a 30-minute session once a month. That's not particularly effective. You cannot build trust with your care provider. You cannot delve into issues in 30 minutes. And that care provider can't really understand you and your issues to be able to adequately adjust them. So we've got to expand that. But the most important thing that I want to do with the veterans is to give them a future beyond the military. And the way I want to do that is to take the model that the military has for recruitment. It's awesome. They get lots of people. They bring them in, they indoctrinate them, and make them a part of the team very well. I'm going to take that focus and flip it and create an outplacement model so that every person, as they're rotating through their term, has an opportunity to either use their GI Bill money to go to college, as they can now, but they can also use that money to do an internship or a work program with local area employers, so that while they are still on base, while they're still in service, they actually are working with a local company, training, learning a trade, a skill, whatever's appropriate for that company, for a 3 to 6 month time period. Then, as they transition out, they can continue to go with that for an additional 6 month period. Opportunity for the military service person to actually develop a skill set and have the experience. They also have the opportunity to not just have the training, to bring on new employees and to raise their resumes. To is looking at the student loan program that's out there. For me, the government should not be using student loans as a source of income. I don't think that college should be free because it is something that you have to work for and understand the value of. But what I would like to see is a hybrid where if someone does take on federal student loans, that for the time period that they're actually in school, they are charged a nominal interest rate. At the point that they actually graduate and complete the schooling, then that goes to a 0% interest rate as long as we get deductions from their paycheck on a regular basis. So that way the incentive is, let's make the college cheaper, but let's also make it so that people want to finish, and they want to finish as quickly as possible because that's going to save them money in the long run. Strengthening that education system on both ends. Kids coming in, kids going out. And all of that builds to kind of a final thing, and that is making sure that opportunity is equal for everyone. It's the government's responsibility, in my opinion, to make sure that everybody has the ability to be successful. They have the chance. And that ability and that chance is based on making sure that they have the education to take advantage of it, that they have the tools and the freedom to be able to step forward and take advantage of the opportunities that are presented. That means equal rights for individuals. That means equal pay for men and women, and the equal opportunity kind of across the board. So pulling all of those things together better support education, and overall trying to switch the focus back to the individual getting the opportunity to grow. That's a lot of what I'm focusing on moving forward. A lot of things that we've done in the past through my company kind of mirror this. We do a lot with working on local nonprofits to bring in veterans to give them training programs. We do skills-based development. We work with their resumes. We do interview training. All of this in an effort to make sure that they can transition from the military to the private sector. But we also go back and fight for fair wages for everyone. Our company was one of the founding members of the Durham Living Wage Project, which is a group dedicated to making sure that every person in the city and county of Durham are paid a livable wage based on the government guidelines, so that each person has the ability from their job to support their family and continually move away from poverty. Right now in Durham, that's $11.03. If you have insurance pay, it's $12.53 if you don't have a benefit program. And so not only do we do that for all the employees that are in our company, but we're also reaching out and pushing to make sure that that's something that's important to everybody within Durham and Durham County. And as a part of that outreach, I'm happy to say that yesterday, Wake County, the county itself, instituted a living wage policy for all of the county employees, which was a great win, something that we've been working with them on. So giving, again, people the opportunity to make a fair wage, to take advantage of the opportunities that are there, but also stepping out of their way so that they can be successful with it. Last thing about me and kind of how we've done things, my company is a certified B corporation. Most people don't know what that is. There are 1,900 of them in the world, and it is what's termed a benefit corporation. So what that means is every decision that we make is based on what's good for our community first, what's good for the environment second, and then thirdly, what's good for the company. So we're still a for-profit company. I still have a mortgage to pay for. But we can use the business as a force for good, making sure that we have a positive impact on our community, a positive impact on our environment, and an enjoyable place to work. So that mindset is what I'm trying to give you an idea of who I am, how I was brought up, how I operate going forward. So that's a little bit of information. Outside of that, the joy that I've gotten from this has been in the conversations. It's been in how I've been able to learn from almost every person that I've talked to. just like when I put somebody in a new job, you can see that light bulb go off of like, oh, this is going to be great. This is a new position for me. This is a new opportunity. I see how this is a way for me to step forward into a better situation. Well, I'm getting those light bulbs from the people that I talk to as we go around the state, because it seems like it's a rarity that a politician actually listens to you, which is why I want to shut up now and hear your questions and be able to answer them, give you my opinions. If you like them, great. If you don't, that's even better, because at least we know now we can start to talk about it and get a better understanding of what's going on and how we can move forward as a state and as a nation. So, thank you for the time. And what questions do you have?
What's your? You said you would like to see term limits. What would you think would be a reasonable term?
12 years. That's 2 terms for the Senate, 6 for the House. I think that's reasonable. And that's based on, we have a term limit for the president. Why on earth do we not have it in Congress, other than the fact that they are the ones that vote for it? And that's the thing. Any business, and then that's part of where I'm going to bring this perspective, any business has to constantly reinvent itself. It has to reinvigorate. And the way you do that is by new people and new ideas and new approaches. But if you're not turning over at the top levels, if you're not bringing in that new fire to get something done, you stagnate. And that allows for the partisanship and for everybody to divide into their own little camps, because there's not a threat from the outside. There's not a reason for them to have to work together to accomplish. And so I think that's a big push for me.
I've been getting to know some of the young folks in the Hispanic community here in Salisbury, and they're trying to open the door and say, so we'd love to have this participate. And I sent a special email for this time. I said, do we have a candidate for the Senate, showing up? You want to come ask your questions and get to know him, and you bring your input. Well, you see how many your young Spanish-speaking people are here. So my question would be, how would you, or what has your experiences have been, reach out to the Hispanic community here in North Carolina, which, even though it isn't real large, could well be the percentage of difference between Republicans and Democrats in a statewide election. What's in it for the young Hispanic who says, oh, why be involved? Nothing ever changes anyway, and nobody cares anything about who I am.
I think that is very much the same argument that you could put on any group within the political realm. Most people feel like they're not heard anymore. And from the Hispanic side, because there is a cultural bridge that we haven't crossed yet, that's even more amplified. From my company standpoint, we've done outreach to try and specifically recruit people that were bilingual for particular positions that we were working on. And what we found has been successful is not reaching out when we need something. It's the constant effort. It's the constant outreach. It's the continual message that, yes, we want you to be a part of this. This is what we're doing. This is how it can benefit all of us. And it can't be tied to come and vote for us at this election. It has to be your voice is important, but only if you speak out loud. And we have to encourage them to continue to speak out loud. Again, building the trust from that constant interaction is the best way to do that in the experiences that I have.
Would you have voted for fast track authority for the president to be able to negotiate the Trans-Pacific Partnership?
I do not like fast track. In looking at the Trans-Pacific Partnership as a whole, there are a lot of different positives and negatives about that. The first thing is I grew up in North Carolina in the age of NAFTA, I watched textile and furniture disappear. So from that memory and protection standpoint, we want to make sure that we are doing what we can to protect our industry here. On the flip side of that argument is the fact that typically if you're not at the table, you're on the table as dinner. So there is an important level for us to be involved in that conversation and to shape as much as we can the regulations that are around there. The thing that I think is missing with TPP as it stands right now, and I haven't read all 6,000 pages, but what seems to be missing is the regulations against currency manipulation. Now, they've tried to address that with a side agreement, but the problem with that agreement is the fact that there's no teeth to it. There's really no way to redress someone who actually does the
Even though China's not a signatory?
Right.
Even though China's not a signatory?
They're the 800-pound gorilla. You have to be involved with them at some point, certainly. But at this point, because of that lack of protection, I would not sign off on TPP as it stands. If we could strengthen the currency manipulation, then yes, I think the coalition of the rest of the countries that are around the Pacific Rim can become much more of a force in trying to bring China in line.
I wanted to ask about, I understand what you're saying about term limits. It makes some sense. But unless we have competitive districts, which is not really, U.S. senators can't do a great deal about it. It's a state issue. But until we have competitive districts, I don't know, the term limits would make a great deal of difference anyway. But, there are a few places where they have turned it over to commissions. But I feel like that's got to...
Well, it will give an opportunity for continual challenge. A lot of what happens, what I've seen in races, that's the person I've always voted for. Mm-hmm. I'm comfortable with that. I remember voting for him. I don't know what he's done. When I tell people I'm running for Senate, most people say, against who? Wow. That's the saddest commentary on a 22-year political career. I expect them to say that about me because I'm the new guy, not about the one that's been up there for that long. So when you force that turnover, we are making them put forth an effort, even if it is in the most gerrymandered district. It's not the same person. You can't vote by habit. And then we continue to push for the independent commissions to do proper redistricting that's going to give everyone a worthy vote, a useful vote.
I understand, but it does reflect the public. The way we have it now, reflect with it. We talk about the total oblivious to what's going on around it, but it still reflects the public, unfortunately. Right. I'm reading a biography, which is it's been around a long time, David McCullough's Truman. Okay. And last night, it was a lot of fun to read. I read about 1948 campaign.
Right.
And just amazing what he managed to pull off. But, he started out as a machine politician in Kansas City. He worked the machine, the pentagraph machine, and he worked his way. And, I hear and I understand this from the attitude we all have, most of us have about politics these days. But when I hear people say, I'm not going to be a politician, I'm not a politician, I like politicians if they know what they're, they've been through the wars and they're doing what they think is right. And Truman's a perfect example of that.
Right.
25 years down the road,
and he had to make some very tough decisions in the positions he was put in.
Oh, it's unbelievable.
Absolutely. And, he made in my opinion, he made right calls.
Right.
Now, you can always question anybody.
Oh, sure.
50 years down the road, but yes, I think part of him coming up that way. But the way I look at it is, there is some value in people who have come up through political ranks, but the outside opinion really gives you an opportunity to refresh things. And just like in making those difficult decisions, I run a business. I've done it for 14 years. I've had to make difficult calls. My business sits between people who are looking for a job and people who need qualified candidates. My daily routine is sitting in the middle and trying to bring people together. And so that's part of what I think is a strength for me growing up is I'm used to that. I'm used to sitting in that middle aisle and trying to say, okay, here's what you need, here's what you have to offer. They're close, how can we bring this together and make it work? And then not only just put them together and leave, but put them together and make sure that they get off to a good start and that we continue to be a resource. And so I think it's that approach of bringing disparate interests together that gives me an advantage.
About the term limits, I was an intern for former Senator Griffin last year.
Yes.
Is term, as far as the Senate and how the Senate works with North Carolina, how it swings back and forth, is it even necessary to have term limits as far as just North Carolina is concerned? Because when I went through the Kagan campaign, we knew we were going to lose. But if it was a presidential election, we knew we could pretty much guarantee that we would win.
Yes, she was 50,000 votes, which is ridiculously small. But when you look at without term limits, one name comes to mind, Jesse Helms. I mean, think about North Carolina if Jesse had been limited to 2 terms. Now, that doesn't mean necessarily that there would be a Democrat taking his place, but there would be a different person. There would be a new viewpoint. And that's what I'm going for. It's not change for the sake of change. Because while that can be useful, it's change because there is a process and program in place because we want to bring in those new ideas.
Following up on that, being close to some of the political circles, not only in this state but other places, when new people come into office, be it state legislature or federal level, the people who lick their chops are the lobbyists. Because the lobbyists are licking their chops because here's this neophyte who doesn't know beans about what's going on, and I do. And not only I know all the ropes, but I have the money and the strings to go with knowing all the ropes. How would you go about educating or protecting the neophytes who would be coming in to that system, which is so heavily controlled and empowered by lobbyists?
There is a lot of opportunity for that, obviously under the system as it is now. Part of the power of the lobbyist is whose ear they have. And if that ear is changing, some of that power is diminished. But the second thing is, each party and party leadership has to play more of that role to bring people in, to teach them how the system works, to make sure that their committee assignments and so forth are going to allow them to bring their best efforts to bear for their state, for their constituents. So it's a combination of the two. Step up from the party, but also the natural, you will have turnover because it's not the same year that they've been whispering for 30 years.
Go ahead. With your student loan plan, how do you incorporate existing student loans into the interest?
I don't have all the finances behind it to look at the aspect of that. I would hope that we could run them in the same way, where if you've achieved your degree, that we move back down to that 10%. Because again, I'm big on incentive. Let's give people a reason to think if you've reached that milestone, then let's pull it down. Now, can we go retro back? That's probably too expensive. Again, I don't know the numbers on that, and I'd have to dive into it. But going forward, right now, student loans are a money-making institution for the government, and I don't think that's an appropriate way for us to make money. Okay.
I was 7 years old when Franklin Roosevelt was first inaugurated as president.
Yes.
He revolutionized our government and everything, and that philosophy lasted until Reagan came in and cut it down. He told people that the government was the problem. And that's been the downfall. The Republican Party is going downhill fast, but they gathered many people for the years ever since Obama was running for president. I summarized the Republican platform in 2 words: greed and racism. They have been going around. I remember when Lyndon Johnson was president and the war on poverty was adopted. I felt like that the general public was saying the churches were not able to do the job that was needed to take care of the poor, and so the government was coming in to help. And they did it through taxes, so everybody was able to donate the same percentage of what they were able to do. And of course, then the Republicans have been talking about people stealing money from the people who work and make money and giving it to the deadbeats. Now that was a big thing of Jesse Helms. I remember he talked about all the poor as being deadbeats. What I want to get to, though, is my understanding where I would estimate that most all political people, Republicans or Democrats, would claim to have a Christian orientation. And some more so than others. Some maybe are really active Christians, and some not. We have that in the rest of the world too, some in the Western countries. But I see that God instituted the government, the state, and the church. And we say that they are to be separated, and that's in the Constitution. And I think that's biblical, that's true. But we still are the same, all the people belong to both institutions. So I guess you mentioned being active in church. I went to a program some years ago. We happened to be Presbyterian, and we had a convention, and 3 Southern governors were Presbyterians, and Jimmy Carter was governor of Georgia. We met in Georgia, but they were to ask them to discuss how their Christian faith influenced their responsibilities as governor. And I don't remember what they said, but it was a very interesting thing.
Right.
But I'll finish with this.